I felt a strange chill run down my spine when I heard a knock on the door. That knock changed everything in ways I could not yet imagine. I had expected an ordinary night with my husband, David, but the sound at the door hinted that something was not as normal as it seemed. I opened the door and saw his brother, Eric, standing there with a small, friendly smile. My heart fluttered with questions that I could not speak out loud. Eric had always been kind and easygoing, but that evening he brought with him a strange feeling. David had called me earlier and said that his brother would drop by for a surprise visit. I thought, why now? I did not know the answer. I invited Eric inside, and the house felt quiet except for our voices. The lights in the living room were warm, and the smell of fresh bread from the kitchen made me feel safe. But there was a tension that I could not shake off. I felt as if something was hidden in the air, something important that I was not aware of. As we sat down and talked, I noticed little things that felt odd. David walked into the room smiling, but his eyes held secrets. Eric seemed to watch me with a mix of curiosity and something else I couldn't understand yet. I tried to enjoy our conversation, but every so often, I felt a knot in my stomach. I remembered when Eric was a child. We used to laugh together at family gatherings. But tonight, his smile did not reach his eyes. There was a seriousness in his tone. That made me wonder if things had changed between us. I tried to brush it off, telling myself that I was just tired from the day. But the feeling of unease stayed with me. David excused himself for a moment to grab some drinks, leaving Eric and me alone. In that moment, the house felt both comforting and strange. Eric looked at me, and his glance seemed to ask a question that I was too scared to answer. I wondered if he had come for a reason that was not just to visit. The uncertainty of his intentions hooked me deeper into the moment. I thought about our marriage and how trust was built over years. But now, as I looked at Eric, I felt a crack in that trust. I did not know what to believe or what was coming next. Would this night reveal secrets I was not ready to face? My mind swirled with possibilities, some of them scary. The clock on the wall ticked loudly as the night grew deeper. I could feel the weight of the silence between us. My thoughts raced. Why had David invited Eric over without telling me more? What did David know that I did not? These questions hung in the air, making everything feel heavy. Eric suddenly stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark street. It reminded me of times when secrets seemed to hide in the shadows. I mustered up the courage to ask him why he was here so late. But before I could speak, he turned back to me with an unreadable look. His eyes held a mixture of sadness and anticipation. When David returned, he looked tired but relieved to see us all together. He handed me 2 glasses of lemonade, his hands shaking slightly. I noticed the trembling but did not ask. The taste of the lemonade was bitter, matching the feelings in my heart. I wondered if David sensed my worry. We sat down again, and I watched David and Eric share a look that made me uncomfortable. They exchanged glances that seemed to speak of something without words. I tried to join the conversation, but my voice was quiet and my thoughts were loud. The feeling of being part of something I did not fully understand spread through me. As the night went on, I caught snippets of conversations that hinted at secrets. There were moments of laughter that felt forced, as if they were trying to hide something. I felt like a spectator in a play where I did not know the script, and every word they spoke made me wonder what was really happening. I thought back to our wedding day and all the promises we made. I remembered how David used to look at me with pure love and how our bond felt unbreakable. But tonight, something had changed. I sensed a bond between David and Eric. I could not see clearly, but felt in the air. It was as if they shared a secret that left me feeling left out and alone. At one point, I found myself alone in the kitchen, and I decided to check on a pot of soup that was simmering on the stove. The warmth of the kitchen did not match the cold feeling in my chest. I looked out the window at the dark yard, and I wondered what darkness lay behind the smiles and stories shared in the living room. I feared that by opening the door to Eric, I had unknowingly stepped into a world that was no longer safe for me. The night continued, and I tried to keep my mind calm. I listened to the soft voices of David and Eric, talking about old times and future plans, but I could not shake the feeling that their words meant something more. Each pause they took felt like a signal, and each laugh they shared felt like a cover for a deeper truth. I felt trapped in a loop of questions and half-truths. My heart beat faster with every glance they shared, wondering if they were planning something without me. The room seemed to shrink around me as I struggled to breathe through the tension. What was their plan? Why was I here when I had no idea what was coming next? I looked at the clock again and saw that time was passing slowly, each minute stretching out like a long road with no end in sight. My hands trembled as I picked up a photo of our family on the coffee table. In the photo, David and I stood close. The picture felt like a relic of a happier time, a time before the doubt and the heavy secrets. Tears filled my eyes as I realized that something was deeply wrong. I tried to understand what was happening without fully knowing, clinging to the hope that I could find the truth before it was too late. My voice was soft when I spoke. "David, is everything okay?" But he only smiled weakly, his eyes darting away from mine, as if he was hiding something. David's response did not ease my mind. He said, "Everything is fine, just enjoying this quiet time." But I knew that behind those words lay a storm of hidden feelings. I noticed Eric glancing at me with a look that made my stomach twist. It felt like he knew something I didn't. As the night grew darker, the conversation took a turn that made my heart beat faster. There were whispers, soft and secretive, that I almost missed. I strained to listen, but I wanted to know more. I had to know what was going on before it was too late. The suspense of not knowing was both terrifying and strangely thrilling. I wandered into another room to get some fresh air, hoping that a change of scene would calm my nerves. The hallway was quiet and dimly lit. With each step, I felt closer to the truth yet further away from the comfort of ignorance. My mind jumped from one worry to another. Was I being left out of something important? What if their secret would shatter our family forever? When I returned to the living room, David and Eric were no longer talking about trivial things. They looked at each other with an intensity that made the air thick. I could feel their eyes on me, and I wondered if they were sharing a silent conversation at my expense. I could not tell what they were planning, but I knew I was part of it somehow. A sudden noise in the house made me jump. It was the sound of footsteps upstairs, but it wasn't anyone I recognized. My heart raced. Could someone else be involved? Was this part of their plan? I kept quiet, hoping that the footsteps would fade away, but they seemed to get closer. The uncertainty made me anxious. I realized I might be overreacting, but the fear felt real. I tried to shake it off and returned to the living room, but the feeling of curiosity and dread stayed with me. I knew that I was on the edge of discovering something shocking, but I did not know what it was. The conversation resumed, and I tried to focus on their words, hoping to catch a clue. They mentioned a plan for the next day, something that hinted at a surprise for me. My mind raced. Was this surprise something good or something I should fear? I listened carefully, but they seemed to dance around the topic. Adding to my confusion, the house felt like a stage, and I was in the middle of a play where everyone knew the script except me. This realization struck me hard. I did not know why I was in this play, or what role I was supposed to have. My feelings were a mix of anger, sadness, and a strange sense of curiosity. I had to find out what was really happening. I thought of the promises we made to each other. I remembered the trust and love that once filled our home. That trust felt brittle now, like glass ready to shatter. I wanted to speak up, to demand answers. I worried that if I spoke too soon, I would push them further away or make things worse. I noticed a small box on the table that I had never seen before. It was neatly wrapped in cloth, and it seemed out of place in our cozy home. My heart skipped a beat as I wondered what it might contain. That box was a hook in itself, a silent challenge to my growing suspicion. I wanted to open it, but I feared what I might find inside. Eric moved closer to me and gently touched my hand. His touch was warm but carried an edge of something I could not understand. It sent a shiver through me, making me question my feelings. Was this just a friendly gesture, or was it something more? I could not tell, but his closeness made my heart pound and my thoughts spin. David looked from Eric to me, his expression unreadable. I felt like I was caught in a silent triangle, not sure where I belonged. The uncertainty was heavy. I knew I had to be careful with my words and actions, but I also needed to find out what was really going on. My mind was a whirlpool of thoughts and emotions. I realized that this night would change something in our lives. It was a turning point, but I did not yet know in which direction it would go. I remembered the fun and laughter that used to fill our evenings, and now all I felt was a creeping sense of dread. Something was happening that I was not prepared for, and I needed to brace myself. My thoughts turned to the future. What would tomorrow bring? Would I find out that our lives were not what I thought they were? The fear of the unknown was both thrilling and scary. I kept thinking about that box on the table and what secrets it might hold. It was like a puzzle piece that I needed to fit into the larger picture of tonight. I sat back down, trying to calm my racing heart. The night was long and full of questions without answers. I watched David and Eric continue their conversation, each word a new piece of the puzzle. I promised myself that I would stay strong and find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. As the minutes turned into hours, I felt a shift in the air. There were small gestures, brief touches, and silent looks that spoke volumes. I felt as if I was on the edge of a great discovery, one that would force me to see my life in a new light. My curiosity grew with each passing moment, pushing me to learn more despite the fear. I wondered if I should speak up now, or wait for the right moment. The feeling of being left out of something important was hard to bear. I needed to know why David had invited Eric, and what their true intentions were. This question drove me to pay close attention to every detail around me, to catch any clue that might reveal the truth. The sound of rain tapping against the windows drew my attention. It was a gentle rain that created a soothing background noise, but even that comfort could not ease my anxious mind. I focused on the raindrops, thinking that maybe I could find some calm in the rhythm. Yet, every drop seemed to echo the uncertainties in my heart. I realized that tonight was not just about a surprise visit. It was about changes in my life that I could not predict. I was at a crossroads, and the path ahead was unclear. I held on to the hope that I would come out of this night with a clear understanding of what was happening and why. The first few hours of the evening had set the stage for something I couldn't yet see. I knew that I had to be ready for whatever came next. Even if it was something shocking or heartbreaking, my world was shifting, and I felt as if I was holding on to a thread that could snap at any moment. As I looked at the warm light of our home, I felt a strange mix of safety and danger. I did not know what the night would bring, but I was determined to face it head-on. The feeling of being in the middle of a secret, something that was building and growing, was both frightening and oddly exciting. With every small sign, the look in Eric's eyes, the secretive whispers between him and David, and the mysterious box on the table, I knew I was stepping into unknown territory. My story was just beginning, and I stood at the edge of a truth that could change everything. Woke up feeling a knot in my stomach, unsure of what was about to happen next. The morning light crept into the room, casting long shadows on the floor. I knew the day ahead would be full of uncertainties, and my heart raced with each tick of the clock. It was a heavy silence that welcomed us, making me wonder if David sensed the secret thoughts swirling in my mind. Every sound in the house seemed louder than the last, echoing my growing fear of what Eric and David had planned. I watched Eric and David sitting in the living room, whispering to one another. Their conversation was hushed, and I strained to listen, hoping to catch a clue. I felt like a quiet spectator in a play I did not want to be part of. Was this really just a friendly visit? Or was there something else going on behind their smiles? Each little gesture between them seemed to spark questions that I dared not voice. I tried to calm my mind, but the feeling of being in a strange story was too strong to ignore as the day moved on. I tried to go about my routine, but every time I passed by their conversation, my heart would jump a little. The smell of coffee brought me back to normalcy for a brief moment, but then I noticed the way Eric looked at me, his gaze lingering a bit too long. I shifted my weight, feeling the awkwardness of the situation pull me deeper into uncertainty. Was he looking for help, or was he searching for something more personal? The air was thick with things unsaid, and my imagination ran wild with possibilities. Soon, David invited me to join them outside for a walk, trying to act like everything was normal. I followed him and Eric, but my mind was filled with worries. Their steps were slow, and their words too measured, as if they were careful not to leave any trace of their true intentions. The sun shone down warmly on us. The gentle breeze carried with it a whisper of secrets I dared not fully grasp. I kept my head low, struggling to appear calm, even as my heart pounded in my chest. We walked in silence for a while until Eric suddenly asked about my day. His voice was soft and kind, but behind the kindness, I sensed a hidden layer. I answered his questions with simple words, watching his face for any sign of revelation. David stayed close, his hand brushing against mine, a silent comfort that I appreciated yet found strangely heavy. I wondered if his touch was meant to reassure me, or to guard me from the truth I was slowly discovering. During our walk, we passed by an old park where I used to play as a child. Memories came flooding back sunny days. But now, those memories were tainted by the reality of my current situation. I remembered how safe I felt back then, completely unaware of the complexities of adult relationships. It made me feel vulnerable, as if I was once again a child, caught in a confusing situation without clear answers. I looked at Eric, wondering if he saw the same familiar scenes or if he knew why I felt this way. We found a quiet bench under a large oak tree. The shadows of the tree danced on the ground, creating patterns that reminded me of how my feelings were twisted and complex. Eric and David exchanged a look, and I felt a pang of fear. They might be planning something on their own, leaving me out of the loop. I shifted on the bench, clutching my hands together as I tried to steady my breathing. Was I being left behind in a part of their lives that didn't include me at all? The silence between us grew heavier. I tried to start a conversation, asking them simple questions about their childhood and family. It was a way to bridge the gap between us, but the words felt hollow as I sensed their minds wandered to deeper unspoken topics. Eric hesitated when he answered, and David looked away for a moment. These small hesitations were like cracks in a wall of secrecy that I began to notice bit by bit. Each crack made the whole structure of our relationship seem less stable and more fragile. I kept thinking about the night before, when I had felt his hands gently guiding me into unknown territory. Those memories haunted me now, blending with the present in a way that left me dizzy. I wondered if Eric remembered those moments the same way I did, or if they meant something entirely different to him. I felt trapped between what I knew and what I feared, and the line between truth and illusion blurred with every passing minute. Eric suddenly changed the subject, asking about a book I once loved as a child. His genuine curiosity gave me a brief moment of relief, distracting me from the tension. I told him about the adventures in that book, and how it felt like a safe world where everything was clear. I could see a flicker of understanding in his eyes, but then his gaze drifted, and I lost track of his expression. It felt like he was carrying his own secrets, ones that might link back to the complicated web I was now a part of. As the conversation continued, I noticed little things that didn't add up. A slight smirk when David mentioned a recent family gathering, a knowing glance exchanged between them that I couldn't decipher. Each of these moments planted seeds of doubt in my mind, but I held them back, not wanting to jump to conclusions too fast. I needed more time to see the truth unfold. But time was something I didn't really have anymore. Every minute felt like a step closer to discovering something unsettling. The walk ended back at our house, where the quiet interior did little to calm my racing heart. I retreated to a corner of the living room, trying to gather my thoughts. The stillness of the house was like a heavy blanket, smothering me with the weight of unspoken feelings. I thought about all the words I had heard and all the secrets that seemed to float around us like ghosts. Was this a test of my strength, or a betrayal that I could never recover from? The fear of what I might learn kept me on edge, ready for the next unexpected twist. When the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the floor, I felt the tension rise once more. Every small sound in the house became louder, and I wondered if David and Eric were plotting something I wasn't aware of. The day had passed slowly, each moment filled with a mix of hope and dread. I tried to hold on to the hope that maybe things were not as bad as they seemed, but deep down, I knew that answers were coming. Answers that would change everything. I thought I knew. With night falling, I found myself back in my room, lying awake and replaying the day in my mind. The soft creak of the floorboards and the rustling of leaves outside my window became the soundtrack to my anxiety. I kept asking myself if I could trust what I had seen and heard, or if I was imagining things out of fear. The door creaked open slightly, and I thought maybe it was David coming to comfort me. But then, silence came back, leaving me to face the unknown alone. The next morning, I woke up to find a small note slipped under my door. The handwriting was unfamiliar, and the words were vague, but the tone was urgent. It said, "Meet me where secrets are kept. Trust no one." My heart jumped at the reading of those words. Who could have written that note? Did someone know about my fears? Or was this a twist in the plan Eric and David were weaving around me? The note was a hook, pulling me deeper into a mystery that I didn't know I could unravel. I spent the rest of the morning trying to make sense of the note while keeping my face calm around David and Eric. I asked myself if this was part of some cruel joke or if there was a genuine need for me to uncover hidden truths. The note made me feel as if I was part of a treasure hunt for answers I both needed and dreaded finding. Every moment made me wonder who I could trust in a house filled with secrets. The game they were playing was one step ahead of me, and I felt like a pawn in a complicated chess match. As the day wore on, I decided to take a small step towards finding more clues. I looked for any traces of the note's origin in our home, perhaps a hidden drawer or a forgotten envelope. My search was slow and careful, like someone tiptoeing around the truth they feared to confront. The walls seemed to whisper as I moved, and each step felt like I was closer to unveiling something I was not ready for yet. But I couldn't stop. I needed to know. During this search, I found a photo tucked behind a book on a shelf. The photo showed David, Eric, and me at a family gathering, but something was off. In the background, I noticed a stranger standing in the shadows. Who was that person, and what did they know? The photo was a puzzle piece that didn't fit with the rest of the story, and it sparked more questions than answers. It was another hook, another thread to pull on, and I hesitated before deciding to follow it. That night, I couldn't sleep again. The image from the photo replayed in my mind along with the strange note. My heart felt heavy, and I knew that I was standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure whether to jump into the abyss of secrets or step back into the safety of ignorance. But the curiosity was stronger than my fear. Each hook I discovered made me more determined to piece together the puzzle. Even if it meant facing heartbreak, I knew I had to be careful. The trust between David and his brother made me wonder if they were watching me closely, aware that I was looking into things. The atmosphere in our home felt more like a stage set, with actors playing roles that I was slowly beginning to see through. My mind was racing with questions. Was I just a bystander or an unintended part of their plot? Each unanswered question tightened the knot in my stomach, but it also pushed me forward. This day was a turning point. I decided that I would not let fear stop me from finding the truth. The note, the photo, the whispers of secrets, they all pointed to something bigger than I could have guessed. I felt like a detective in a quiet story, with clues scattered around every corner of my life. My feelings of betrayal and confusion grew, but so did my resolve to piece everything together. No matter how painful it might be, with the sun setting once more, I prepared for what lay ahead. The hooks planted throughout the day had drawn me into a web of suspense, and I was ready to face the next challenge, no matter what it revealed. I closed my eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath to steady myself. The truth was near, but so was the danger of uncovering it. The feeling of being trapped by secrets was both terrifying and strangely exhilarating, knowing that the real story was just around the corner, waiting for me to pull back the curtain. I sat in the dim light of the living room, holding the small, worn notebook I had found hidden behind a loose brick in the fireplace. My hands trembled as I flipped through its pages, and I could not believe what I saw. Each page was filled with secret messages and strange codes that I could barely understand. I felt a mix of fear and curiosity. The air felt heavy around me, and my heart pounded as I turned each page slowly. Was this really happening? What secrets did this book hold that would change everything? I was scared to read further, but my need for answers was stronger than my fear. The first lines were written in a neat hand, and I tried my best to decipher them. At first, but soon I noticed patterns and hints of something deeper. I found small symbols and notes in the margins that I could not explain. As I moved from line to line, I realized that this notebook was not just a diary, but a map of secrets that someone wanted to hide from me. I paused on a page where David and Eric had written about meeting in secret. My mind raced with questions. Why would they write this down in front of me? Did they know I would find it one day? Each sentence I read made my heart sink a little more. I noticed that the handwriting changed between pages, and I wondered if someone else had contributed. I clutched the notebook tighter, feeling the weight of a betrayal I could barely understand. I still did not know the full story, and that mystery kept me hooked. The sound of a creaking floorboard behind me made me jump, and for a moment I thought someone else was there. I closed the notebook quickly, my breath catching in my throat. Was someone watching me? I listened carefully, but the house remained silent. It felt like the secrets of that notebook were alive in the room, keeping me company in my fear. I took a deep breath and opened it again, determined to find the truth hidden in its pages. As I read more, I discovered small sketches tucked between the lines, drawings of places I did not recognize. They seemed to be part of a plan, or maybe a journey. My mind filled with questions. Were these sketches hints of where they had been together without me? What adventures did they share that I was never part of? Each drawing and note felt like a piece of a puzzle that was slowly coming together, but I still had no clear picture of what was truly happening. One page had a list of dates and times that made my stomach twist. It looked like a schedule of secret meetings, and I felt a chill run down my spine. The more I read, the more I realized that David and Eric had been planning something big. I wished I could just close the book and walk away, but I could not. I needed to know what was coming next. The notebook was like a whisper in my ear, urging me to read on despite my fear. I came across a line that made me drop the book for a moment. It mentioned a place I had visited with David many years ago, a place that held happy memories. Suddenly, the notebook felt like a betrayal of all those good times. How could he bring that up in such a secret way? The realization made me sad and angry at the same time. I closed the book, my mind swirling with thoughts. I needed to know why he would bring up our past like this in such a twisted context. I decided to step away from the notebook for a while, but the story it told kept me close by. I wandered into the next room, the soft carpet under my feet making each step feel heavier than the last. I thought about the happy times before all of this, and wondered where those moments had gone. I remembered laughter and love, but now those memories felt tainted by secrets. I didn't know what to feel or how to react, but I knew that I had to keep moving forward to find the truth. I returned to the notebook later, my resolve harder than before. This time, I approached it with a plan. I would try to decode the symbols and sketches, line by line, hoping that each new discovery would bring me closer to understanding their secret. The evening sun cast long shadows on the pages, and the light flickered, as if it wanted to reveal even more mysteries. My mind was set, even though I was filled with fear. I knew that each word I read was another step closer to the truth that had been hidden from me for so long. As I continued reading, I found a torn piece of paper folded carefully between the pages. It was a letter written in a hurried hand, and I could barely make out half the sentences. The letter mentioned a plan to meet someone named Leela at a place called the Old Bridge. My heart jumped at the mention of a name I did not recognize. Who was Lila, and why did they need to meet her? The letter ended abruptly, leaving me with more questions than answers. I felt a pit in my stomach and knew that this was a clue I needed to follow up on, even if it scared me. I don't know what to do, and I don't know what to think of it. What are your thoughts on it? I'm curious about other people's opinions on this, and that's why I am telling this story. It is crazy what happened, but I can't deny it. On top of that, I am never able to turn things back.